Hey guys, what's going on? Uh, what I want to talk about today is evaluating information sources in totality, and was inspired by uh, it was kind of a debate, kind of a conversation between a friend of mine, and it also had to deal with people who defend certain sources of information by saying something to the tune of like they've done so much for the Second Amendment or they've done so much for the two-way community. And the question to that is, have they? Have they actually done so much? Like, what actually have they done? So, and the way this debate or argument was presented was like, why is why don't you like this person who has nearly the same background or resume or lack thereof as this other person you like, and both of them say good things or put out good info? And when I was asked that, it was really the first time I had to stop and think about why did I feel the way that I felt towards certain sources of information where they had similar backgrounds like that, but I preferred one over the other. And I really had to think about it and put it into words and elaborate on it because I'd never really been asked to do that before because most of the people that shared my opinion had seen or understood the same thing and the nuances thereof. So it was kind of like a common understanding that didn't need to be explained or elaborated on. And I've always said that you don't have to be anyone special to be right. You just have to be able to substantiate what you're talking about. So, in cases where multiple parties are doing this, where they're not anybody special, but they're right and they can substantiate what they say, they need to be evaluated through a different lens, and it's not resume or lack thereof. Me personally, I look at the long-term second and third order effects of that person's interactions and influence on the community and how they wield that star power and what they do with it. So if you have two sources of information that enjoy a large following and high regard, and both of those sources lack a particularly impressive cool guy sort of resume, and both of them are delivering factual, data supported, and proven information, regardless of how or where they obtain that information, we have to look at the long term effect they have on the people that are tuning into them, or the people whose attention they're getting. So, between two sources, if one empowers the mindset and therefore the capability to execute, and one of them encourages the audience to be soft and fearful of all and therefore any challengers, or while the one guy is empowering the mindset and the capability to execute, the other one is making rocky and tumultuous the audience's path to higher learning by building roadblocks in their mind that's built on misinformation or hinged on a cult of personality, then the former is what I would refer to as a net positive source of information, and the latter is a net negative source of information. And the questions I tend to ask when I look at these sources of similar credential or lack thereof is, are they producing a stronger willed community and enabling them to be as capable and confident and determined as they can be, and unity among them all along with it? Or do they breed weakness and laziness and complacency of the mindset of the rank and file, never asking them to challenge themselves or those who would challenge them, but rather preaching that they are avoidant of such, and therefore they become soft and then this person is subliminally endorsing cowardice? Do they encourage their students to learn from the best out there and set them up for success, or do they hamper and limit their ability to learn by building mental blocks of misinformation and lies and arrogance in the minds of those that they're speaking to? Do the people that come into contact with these information sources come away greater educated and of greater capability, or are they resistant to new information, argumentative towards it, and therefore of lesser capability to confront and surmount whatever challenges they may come across. So to go deeper into how I define these things, a net positive source delivers factual information that is insightful, it's tested, it's proven, and they facilitate a strong or stronger, more informed collective mentality in the Second Amendment community overall. They galvanize the resolve and the incentive to participate in the Second Amendment community and its activities and protect it, and overall to win. A collective of self-reliant, vigilant-minded people makes for a stronger collective overall, and a net plus or a net positive source of information promotes the readiness thereof. Now, conversely, there's two different definitions I have for a net negative source. And the first one is that they deliver factual information that's insightful, it's tested, and it's proven, but they breed a weaker or reluctant collective mentality in the Second Amendment community overall by promoting laziness and complacency in skills development, where one is led to conclude, I'll never have to worry about it, so I don't have to worry about it, which degenerates into like a easy come, easy go approach that can potentially pave the way for, like, I don't know if you want to call them neo-FUDs or new FUDs, but like a resurgence of this FUD mentality where they're not coming for my guns, so I don't need to participate in Second Amendment defensive advocacy. And this, it'll never happen to me, so I don't have to worry about it mentality is the antithesis of not only preparedness, but the spirit of the Second Amendment overall, wherein one is responsible for their own safety from all threats, foreign or domestic. And this further dovetails into this outsourced responsibility mindset among gun owners where, they look at it like, it'll never be me that faces down and stops the bad guy, so I can depend on others to handle it, which is made worse when a net negative source of information takes the approach of, it's okay to be mediocre because most will only ever be mediocre. And rather than broadcasting consistently a message of, like, keep it 100 or do whatever you have to do to get to that point. Overall, a net negative source of information results in the absence of a readiness mentality, which breeds weakness of the mind, and culminates in a community that never rises to face and successfully defeat a challenge. The other definition is where, while they're delivering factual info that's tested and proven in a manner of speaking, they also breed a divisive mentality in the community by delivering information that lacks proper context and or frame of reference, because it's never really been substantiated with data or in the field or personal experience. Like, they're essentially like parroting other people's information, which if you're just saying like, I learned such and such from so-and-so, and they said, that's one thing. But these people do that, and then this goes on to contradict what is otherwise held to be validated information because they like put their own twist. Remember, I said it lacks a proper context, so the delivery of it causes a contradiction with what we collectively understand to be valid info. So guys like this are often, they're surrounded by a cult of personality, and this variety of net negative actually encourages or promotes infighting among the community by telling their followers that they're attacking my credibility because they're jealous because I'm right, so that makes them wrong and you should defend me. And it's not unlike playing a victim card. And you never see a net positive using their followers and subscribers as human shields and rallying them up to defend them from critics on the internet, because they don't have to. Their legitimacy speaks for itself. So, a net negative accomplishes this voluntary bodyguard phenomenon among their audience by preying upon those that don't know any better and feeding them bad information or lies. And you see this with products and personalities both. And there never seems to be a shortage of those who would defend samples of either that are deemed less than optimal. It could be guns, it could be armor, it could be trainers, gear, it doesn't matter. There's never a shortage of people that are ready to throw down in defense of something that they were convinced was legit that is actually not legit. And the people that produce this content or these products are often seen saying of their critics, they're just jealous, they're just haters, poor me, which just, gets them all spun up and angry and stuff like that. And to make a little sidebar comment, not all gun owners are fighters on the physical battlefield. I understand that. I understand there's people that some of them buy guns to compete and only to compete. Some of them are not physically able as much as others are, and it's just there for like home defense, nightstand gun, and that's the most it ever gets used. Some people are just getting started in the art of marksmanship. And so I get that they're not everyone's like a Minuteman, if you will. But there are yet other battlefields that require just as much resolve and hardness of the mindset as though they were. This is why it's important that the mentality promoted is always one of strength and self-reliance, as it has a force multiplying effect on those surrounding it. You always see, like, in a crowd of people panicking, the one guy who's calm and is looking through the madness for a path forward to proceed. The people that are immediately close to him kind of pick up on that, and they calm the fuck down a little bit, and they like, okay, this guy looks like he's confident that we can get through this, so if he thinks he can get through it, maybe we can get through it if we stick with him. And there you go. And now we've collectively increased our chances of solving the problem. Either way, a net positive source germinates the community with seeds of good information and a positive, vigilant, galvanized mindset, even among those that are not naturally quote-unquote warriors at heart. And it encourages them towards participating in the Second Amendment community and defending it. And those receiving this information spread it among their peers, which elevates the greater Second Amendment community overall. The net result of this source's interaction with the community is always positive, and it makes the community better as a result. A net negative information source introduces second and third order effects via the fashion, style, or tone in which they deliver their information, good or bad, which manifests later in the form of infighting and misinformation. Fruit of the poisonous tree, in a manner of speaking. This is inexcusable, and it cannot be overlooked. There is no such thing, at least to me, but I know I'm not alone in this, there's no such thing as a person getting a pass because they're pro-2A, because we are all pro-2A by default. So what therefore makes us different, or how do you, if everyone is pro-2A, what metric do you use to then evaluate or tell them apart? As it pertains to net negatives, the long-term damages done to the collective mentality and awareness of the community cancels out the short-term benefits that they apparently provide. So it might look like on the surface or at first glance like, oh, this guy's really good, he's getting people into it, and he's always, putting a positive image out there, but then you look down the road and the problems that are caused by the information and the influence they have on the audience severely outweigh and overshadow these short-term benefits. And when the people so misled by a net negative encounter those in the community who are taught or quote-unquote raised proper under the tutelage of a net positive source, there exists like a mental wall or a learning block in the former group of the net negative influence people, and it stalls their further learning progress. And instead of receiving new information, they resist it, and instead they want to argue. And this is where the law of primacy, which in summary states, that which is learned first is retained most, rears its ugly head here. And this is why we always have to caution standards, which I'll get to in a minute. But this effect of basically being hard to teach, or this fruit of the poisonous tree, if you will, it makes the job of the would-be guide or educator that much harder, because now instead of teaching and imparting knowledge, they need to spend time getting inside the head of the misled and argumentative person and getting into their wiring and unfucking the damage caused by the net negative source. So instead of, all right, we have an hour that I could show you some good shit, this person's like, but this person said, or, but this is what I've used, but this is just as good, or this has worked for me and it's never given me a problem. And now it's like, all right, where did you get that information from and why? And I'll do a separate video on how I personally get inside the head of people that are defending shit like they're defending themselves, and the techniques I use, which they're sincere, but what I do to get them to realize that it's not them I'm criticizing, and then get them to open their mind to receive new information. But overall, this is why we have standards and vetting of everything. Information sources, gear, equipment, you name it. And that's not anything new. It's been heard before by me at Tactics and Applications, or Matt over at Primary and Secondary, or for many years prior on Light Fighter. This is not a new concept among our circles. The point here is that the person on the podium is obligated. It's imperative that they make sure that their message is always some form of strive for 100 and seek out the experts of the craft. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of is net negative sources putting themselves out there like they are the expert when they're not. Even as going as far as to take money for their unsubstantiated input, regardless of how legit or not it is. And all this does is distract and delay the eager learner from finding a net positive source to learn from. We, as in the community overall, are collectively responsible to point people to the best sources and let them fail on their own merits and lack of effort, rather than assuming that they'll only ever be mediocre and rewarding that mediocrity by further perpetuating it, by telling these people or recommending that the novice patronize a net negative source based on that assumption. Like, if you went to parent-teacher night and you found out that the faculty was only teaching the students to pass their scores with a 70 because, well, that's the best they're really ever going to do anyway, so it's passing, you'd flip the fuck out. Like, why aren't you teaching my kid how to pass with hundreds? Why are you only teaching them to the proficiency level of a 70? Because you assume that they'll only ever be mediocre? Mediocre. I gotta figure out how to fucking say that word the right way and stay with one pronunciation. Anyway, so doing that, like assuming that people are only ever going to be mediocre and then just therefore referring them to less than stellar learning sources is so irresponsible. Because were these people professionals or civilians, it doesn't matter. If they're ever to get into a shooting and mess up because they got bad information or they were poorly taught from a suboptimal or net negative source, and that gets revealed in court, that's a black eye and a dark mark on the entire 2A community, and a burden we will all share in, whereupon we've invited all criticism and scrutiny upon ourselves for our complacency towards those we should be taking the utmost care in guiding. Because now not only is that person getting hemmed up for a bad shoot, but now the training community stands to possibly take a hit for allowing bad information that fails to meet a standard to be disseminated openly. And this opens a yet darker door to further scrutiny and potential government regulation of the training industry, which is something my friend Eric Graves over at Soldier Systems has spoken on previously. Put differently, a net positive result, let's look at it in like a driving context, right? A result of encountering a net positive or net plus source of information is the vigilant driver mentality. And the result of coming into contact with a net negative source of information is the soft driver mentality, where they're being told that they're being quote-unquote safe drivers, or the road rage driver mentality, and they're being told they're being vigilant drivers. So this is just stuff that occurs to me while I'm driving to work. And I wrote it down because it made sense, so here you go. The way I look at this is like a vigilant driver. They stand their ground and they hold their place in a lane. They don't allow people to cut them off. They fill gaps in traffic ahead of them, and they get where they have to go quickly but safely. They could weave through lanes. They can thread the needle. They can use the speed and weight of their vehicle in tandem to perform maneuvers around slower drivers and stuff like that. And they're informed of these aspects by a balance of training, practice, and experience. The road rage driver, he employs aggressive lane changes. He's constantly cutting people off. He's confrontational with other drivers. He calls people that follow the rules of the road bootlickers, and typically shit talks police for enforcing traffic laws. You can kind of see the parallel that I'm drawing here. And then you finally get the soft driver mentality. And these are the people that are like speed limit or less. They hold up the lane behind them, and the lane in front of them is wide open. They're constantly getting cut off and bullied around on the road. They're convinced they're being safe, and if they've got others in the car who maybe they're like trying to learn how to drive, they're telling these people that they're being safe drivers and following the rules of the road. And therefore disseminating bad info. Like, you could see how that's that fruit of the poisonous tree effect, where it's like person A receives bad info and goes and tells persons B, C, and D bad info, and then it's like the Trevor's axiom effect from South Park. It just spreads from there. So, in either case, with all three of these categories of drivers, none of them are asked to be NASCAR drivers in their speed or vehicle handling, where NASCAR drivers are synonymous to the SOF, SWAT, TAC team guys. I'm not saying all shooters have to be direct action trained, and nobody is asked to own, none of these drivers are asked to own top shelf performance vehicles and sports cars, which are, in this case, synonymous with like all the fucking expensive Gucci gear that's out there. I'm not saying that they have to have that top shelf stuff to be successful. The vigilant driver can handle any make or model they sit at the wheel of, given their needs of that vehicle. But they always prefer a vehicle that meets or exceeds a particular quality mark, be it entry level or top shelf. Which is to say, like, past a certain point of acceptable quality, there's something for everybody. And then there's anything that falls under that quality standard. It doesn't matter if they're entry level, like your Colt 6920, or if they're top shelf, like a HK 416 or a Hodge AU Mod 2 or a Knights Armament SR15 or something like that. They all are above a quality benchmark that is acceptable and are priced accordingly. So, in conclusion, these net negative sources of info, false prophets that they are, they need to be regarded accordingly and shit-canned. They do not encourage or create victors in the minds of their audience. They sow stupidity and cowardice, and they have no place among us in the Second Amendment community as far as I'm concerned. And with this criteria, I want you to go out there and think about what you see. What is the net result of a person that encounters information source A and information source B? One of those varieties of students will come out with a positive mindset and eager to learn more and willing to stand their ground. And the other one, you either get people that, as a result of coming into contact with these sources, they're like, no, I don't want none of that business, no way. It's not going to be me, so I don't have to pursue higher forms of training or proficiency. I don't have to worry about my draw speed and precision of the first shot on the draw and combatives and all this other stuff that we recommend people go to, because I'm not going to need it anyway. And this is kind of like the gun is a talisman mentality that we've heard in the past that Matt over at PNS spoke of. And it's like, well, what the fuck is the point of you carrying the gun then if you don't fancy yourself in any situation? Not saying you should go run into trouble, but it's like they're taught to avoid, like, it's like some states have a duty to retreat in their laws. These people are the ones that teach people, or encourage them to like be in duty to retreat mode everywhere with anything they come into. Or you get people that want to get belligerent and defend this negative source of information. You're just jealous because you can't shoot as fast. Get the fuck out of here. Some of the people I respect most shoot way better than me. I've always held myself, I'm good enough for government work. But someone being able to shoot better than me is not going to break my heart, because there's always going to be someone that shoots better than me or does anything better than me. As long as I could do it at a high level of proficiency, I'm happy, and that's not to say I'm resting on my laurels and not worrying about getting better, but so what? The guy, oh, you can't shoot like he does. Okay, that's fine. Like, I'm not worried about that, but maybe they're not, if shooting accurately very fast is something that person's good at, but that's really like the only thing that they're good at, why are they talking about other shit? Or one thing I find is that there's like a prevalent mentality among kids these days in the community where a non-government employee is, let's see, how should I put this? A person that's pro 2A and actively shoots, who's a civilian that never served in the military or was never a cop, is preferable to someone with law enforcement or military background who is also pro 2A. And I don't know where that came from. Like, I get, like, trust me, I totally agree. Just because you're in the military or just because you're a cop doesn't automatically mean you know what you're talking about or you're a good shooter or anything like that. And in most cases, it's true. They're not. The guys that make an effort to practice and get training beyond what is afforded to them by their agencies, those are the guys that take that shit seriously, because it's the one life or death tool they have. Like in the case of law enforcement, you can mess up paperwork, you can mess up anything and fix it. But once that bullet leaves that barrel, you can't undo that. That bullet's flying. And hopefully it either hits what you were intending to hit or a wall, if not. But yeah, there's this weird mentality among kids where it's like, oh, he's a civilian and he's so pro 2A. Or it makes me feel good that so-and-so is pro 2A and was never LE or MIL. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because when I was new, it was understood that, like, you wanted to learn the thing from the guys that did it for a living. Like, if we're going to say that not everyone in the military or law enforcement is necessarily a good marksman, then you also have to say that, however, there are those among them that stand out who are particularly good at that thing, and then they go into the teaching field in this industry, and now you got newcomers that are like, nah, fuck that guy. I want the civilian guy. Cops and military are bad. Fuck the government. Fuck the crown. Fucking bootlickers. And it's like, who put that idea in your head? Where did you get that from? They got it from a net negative source of information. Because the people that are net positive, law enforcement, military, civilian background, don't matter. You don't hear people that, like, frequent, like, you could have guys that hop from, like, Chuck Pressburg to Steve Fisher to Bill Blowers to Scott Jedlinski to Mark Smith to Jared Reston. You never hear that from people that go train with those people. Those guys, and I'm not, like, trying to shill or do a promo here, but it's true, those guys don't have, like, a negative effect on their that people come away from them as better versions of themselves. They're stronger in the mind, in their capability, in their skill set. They've gotten new information. They will go to other people among their peers and tell them, yo, I learned some good shit from this guy. Go. And it's all smooth sailing. But then you get the net negatives out there that create these people that are like, nah, fuck that for reasons. Or my AR-500 armor is the best. Or this brand of firearm that's a known piece of shit has always worked for me. And then they encounter the people that know better that are like, nah, fam. And then they want to argue and then they just want to be difficult. Well, not that they want to be difficult, but they are difficult. They've now slowed or stalled the learning process. But this all comes from, like I said, somebody asked me to elaborate on my thoughts and feelings on the subject, where these two guys, none of them are cool guys in the past. Why do you like one but not like the other? Well, why is that? And I realized it's because of the effect that they have on the people that they come in touch with, the people that they encounter. People that they encounter are either better or they're fucking annoying and misinformed and they are a poison to the other people. And then those among us that give those motherfuckers a pass and let them slide, most people are only ever going to be mediocre, so it's okay to send them to a mediocre training facility or something like that. That, to me, that's fucked up. That's wrong in ways I've already elaborated on. So think about that. Let me know what you think. Stay safe out there.